Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Dr. Cyclops, 1940. After the short-lived success of using Technicolor in Warner Brothers horror films such as Dr. X in 1932 and Mystery of the Wax Museum a year later, it was another 7 years before a major studio attempted the format again. In 1940, Paramount released Dr. Cyclops, a science fiction horror movie where the color format was treated with care as part of a decent budget. Director Ernest P. Schoedsack re-teamed with Merian C. Cooper, his producing partner on King Kong, to ensure high-quality and elaborate special effects in the tale of a group of researchers and civilians miniaturized by a mad scientist in the Amazonian jungle. Even the co-producer, Dale Van Every, had an esteemed pedigree as an Academy Award-nominated screenwriter on 1937's Captains Courageous. The title, Dr. Cyclops, doesn't quote the notorious monster of Greek mythology mindlessly. Tom Kilpatrick's script is a modern fantasy retelling of the battle of wits between Odysseus and his crew and the giant Cyclops Polyphemus, who holds them prisoner in his cave in a faraway land. In the film, a seemingly benign scientist, Dr. Thorkel, Albert Decker, is experimenting with a new source of radium he has been mining in his camp deep in the Amazon. He raves about his findings to his associate Dr. Mendoza, Paul Fix, while a splendidly lurid green glow bathes them. Thorkel is already an intriguing figure. Decker's shaven head and Coke bottle glasses were said to be an imitation of the World War II Japanese troops in the Pacific. With his ungainly frame clothed in a rumpled linen suit and the soft beguiling calmness to his voice, a subtler comparison might also be to a friendly mole. This impression is soon dispelled, though, as he cold-bloodedly murders his colleague in the light of his powerful radium beam invention, radiating Mendoza's face into a ghastly luminous skull. Thorkel then sends a message to esteemed colleagues back home to come and see him. The party is made up of 3 scientists: the clinical Dr. Bullfinch, Charles Holton before his noted work in To Be or Not to Be and Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, Janice Logan's Dr. Mary Robinson, and a rakish mineralogist, Dr. Bill Stockton, Thomas Coley. Accompanying them are Victor Killian, Steve Baker, who wangles passage with them in return for the use of his mules, and Frank Iaconelli as their whimsical Peruvian guide Pedro. Killian suspects that Thorkel has found a radium mine and wants a piece of the action. When they arrive, Thorkel is cagey about his work to begin with. He had Pedro procure large numbers of cats, dogs, and chickens for his work, which are never seen again. In secret, his experiments with radium have resulted in miniaturizing Pedro's horse to a few inches in size. The able trick photography for this is an introduction to the far greater technical skills to come. After the team find pitchblende samples that indicate the presence of valuable radium, they snoop in Thorkel's laboratory. His anger on discovering them flares and then subsides, appearing contrite at his initial secretiveness. He disarms their suspicions with a soothing invitation to see his condenser contraption. They crowd into the small room, whereupon he locks them in and blasts them with his ray that shrinks them to 13 inches in height. Now they will become his first human test subjects to be studied like freak lab rats, if he can get his hands on them all. Incidentally, I couldn't help noticing that whilst almost all the hero teams have fashioned togas out of cloth, for some reason their clothes didn't shrink with them, Pedro has made himself what looks like a child's nappy. What sells Dr. Cyclops is the superb process photography by 2-time Oscar winner Farcio Edouard and W. Wallace Kelly. Assisted by Gordon Jennings' photographic effects, they convey well the scale differences between the shrunken team and the suddenly threatening everyday world around them. Hans Dreyer and his art department craft excellent oversized props and furniture on the sets for the actors to interact with, such as an enormous book, a locked door, and a huge shotgun they try to aim at Thorkel. At times, back projection is also used with skill to blend large images in the background with the imperiled group in the foreground, or in reverse, so that footage of a looming alligator is on our side against back projected film of the fleeing group. The money shot of the movie is a real feat of special effects, all the more impressive for being rendered practically in camera, decades before post-production CGI. To show Thorkel taking measurements of the miniature Dr. Bullfinch, the effects team display a back projection of Decker acting with Holton before him, his eye line well judged, and then introduce a huge mechanical arm from screen right, flesh-toned and convincingly rendered in detail, to grasp the Doctor and relate to him in the same continuous take. It's a highly intricate set piece of multiple elements and works extremely well. As Thorkel measures Bullfinch's new vital statistics, his prey sees the classical illusion on offer, describing the tiny troop as prisoners in Cyclops' cave. The insane biologist takes umbrage at the personal reference to his poor eyesight, so unfortunately for Bullfinch, he's chirped his last. Thorkel kills him with a giant swab soaked in poison. Pedro also buys it later from a shotgun blast by his employer, falling like a child's doll into the river. The remaining threesome must use all their professional smarts to negotiate the super-sized terrain, complete with a hostile bear, a tiger, and the aforementioned alligator. As Thorkel flounders in pursuing them, he gloatingly informs them that they can't hide for long, as they will soon return to normal size. He credits them with too little ingenuity, though, forgetting that intelligence is not reduced along with stature, and gets the shaft courtesy of a plunge down his zealously guarded mine. Dr. Cyclops is a fun and imaginative mixture of science fiction ideas and a touch of the macabre, handsomely mounted with a rare wealth of resources. The visuals are supported by a playful music score from Gerard Carbonara, Albert Hay Malott, and Ernst Toch that adds to the lush fantasy production values. Reminiscent of a sumptuous Disney adaptation of Jules Verne, it is hard to believe this little Technicolor gem is from the same era as the dark, dour, monochrome cheapies audiences were mainly given. If only Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi had been showcased with such means. The religio-philosophical dimension of suddenly having smaller dimensions would be elegantly examined by Richard Matheson's literate The Incredible Shrinking Man in 1957, while the possibilities of scientific advancement through miniaturization were lavishly imagined later in Fantastic Voyage. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.